So Ken's in New Jersey?
Yes.
East Coast America. Robin's in up north in England.
Yeah, Manchester. Manchester.
Kevin's in just outside of Brisbane in Australia.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And, well, you probably know where I am, Wollongong, Australia. And Andy Harrod should be joining us soon. And he's up your way, isn't he, Robin?
Yeah, he's a bit further north, yeah.
Welcome to the Full Stop Podcast with Sarah Lawrence from After the Storm, Berenice Smith from Walking Our Shoes, and me, Michael Hughes from Married and Childless. This episode is one close to my heart. We've been able to gather more guys to give us the men's perspective of being childless not by choice. And we have, for the second time, been able to coordinate 3 continents. I'm proud to call these men my brothers. The courage they show, leading by example in talking through what it's like to be male and childless, is what our community needs more of. So before I get emotional, let's get on with the show. Welcome everyone to another man's episode of the Full Stop Podcast. And in the room we have Ken from New Jersey, East Coast America. We have Kevin Riley from Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. Yay for another Aussie. Andy Harrod from the UK, Robin Hadley from the UK, and Berenice and Sarah are very quietly sitting in the background watching what goes on. So,
hey everybody, we'll just do a quick hello.
Hello.
You know that we're here.
so this could get messy because there's 7 of it. Hang on, there's 8 of us. Hang on, yeah, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, my maths are okay. So what we'll do is we'll just go round the room and just the idea of this show is just so us guys can have a chat together and hopefully be an example for other men to join in or feel that they want to contact us, because we are a hard nut to crack. So let's go to Ken first, because he's been dying to get on the podcast for a while now. He told me some months ago, he said, look, I'll have a go. So Ken, tell us who you are, where you are, and as much as you want to share how you got to this place and how did I rope you into doing this.
Okay. Well, as Michael said, I live in New Jersey in the U.S. Been here for about 12 years. Originally from New York, was born and raised in New York, and in the Bronx. Probably heard of that in some of the movies, you know, when they're about the gangs and stuff. But where I grew up was a nice area. It's called City Island, funny place. But let's see, I met my wife 35 years ago. Met her in a gas station. I was on my way early in the morning to get a cup of coffee and didn't think my car would even actually make it to the store to get the coffee. So I stopped in the gas station. It was on a Sunday. She was in there having car trouble. And of course, being a Sunday, there was no mechanic on duty. So I offered to give her a hand, see if I could help her out. And she said she was on her way to church. But when she came back, she would like me to look at it. And I told her I'd be down my brother's boat yard. She knew where that is, knowing the area. And she came down. A couple hours later, I was very surprised. I told her, just, okay, I'll come. Would never show up, but she did. And, well, 10 months later, I asked her to marry me, and we did. She did. And been with her for 35 years now. Beautiful girl, love her very much. She's very, very caring, sensitive woman, and she has been with me with my issues. She was married before and does have 2 children from that. When I met her, they were grown. I think they were 18 and 15 at the time, and they didn't live with us, so I had no dealings in there growing up. I don't know. I feel with the childless issue, it was easier for me to deal with in the early years of our marriage. It's been seemingly getting compoundingly harder the older I get. I've had to deal with things throughout the years, and different occasions, like going to her kids' birthday parties, weddings. They both had gotten married, and then each of them had 2 kids. So all this was, like I was saying, as the years go by, it was getting worse and worse, because now we see her kids having kids, and I'm still without. And I don't know. It's different times of the year, as everybody here knows, are more difficult than others. Probably Mother's Day last year was the worst for me, oddly enough, because that was the day her kids came over. Now they're one is divorced, so his girlfriend came with her son and his girlfriend, and I think I had mentioned this on a post. All they did was start talking about their kids, and they each have 2 kids, even the girlfriend of the son. And I just felt like a fool sitting there listening to everybody talking about their kids, and I just didn't know what to do. I just sat there quiet, listening.
Yeah, I can hear in your voice how tough it is, Ken.
Yeah.
Look, thanks for sharing that. Let's give you a rest. And because I can certainly hear how hard that is.
Okay.
And we'll come back to you, Ken. You just take a little 5 minutes there.
Sure.
Thank you, Ken, just for talking and sharing your story with us. It's very moving to hear. Just wanted to say thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, because one of the other things, Ken, is one of the things that we find a lot in the podcast is that we have a lot of women that are very vocal, but the whole point of this is to try and let some of the women see that yes, we do grieve in our way, and so no, thank you for sharing that. How about we go to Andy?
Hello. So yeah, I'm Andy. I've been on here a couple of times, I think, once recorded, talking about myself in a male perspective. So I'm in the UK, living in Lancaster in the north. Was born and raised in Norfolk, so gone from the flats to the hills. I'm a psychotherapist and a PhD student, researching well-being in nature, which is rather stalled at the moment, as I'm wanting to talk to human people, and I'm starting cats instead. So, like Ken, I've known my wife for a long time. We've known each other for 20 years. We met at uni in '99. And by March we were going out, and by May we were engaged, which is all rather quick. It then took us 9 years to get married, and we both always wondered if we'd have done everything sooner, would we have kids? Because after it's been 10 years really since we started trying. It's just been full of miscarriages, negative tests, grief, upset, loneliness, distress, being an outsider. But it has also brought us closer. So yes, we've grieved, and I can tell I'm in a very different place to where I have been, because while the lockdown in the UK means I'm isolated, we're at home together, and that brings back memories of the childlessness where we just didn't want to go out and didn't want to be triggered. I do feel more okay with it, more able to reflect and sort of accept one perspective of this is tough and this has reminded me of that, but also thinking, well, there's a bigger global perspective here. Well, I think in the midst of real childless grief, it's just all consuming, and being part of support groups then was almost impossible, where from sort of last year I really sort of started to shift and met sort of like Sarah through Twitter, and then came on the Full Stop and met Michael and Berenice. I've chatted to Jodie since and being part of us, and Robin at a conference in Chester, or a festival day around childlessness, and sort of come out of myself more. And it's been nice in that way, because when you chat, it's not just about the childless grief, it's also about, there's just jokes, or we're seeing what each other's up to. So like finding out that Sarah can touch her toes during yoga, where I'm a long way off, but maybe by the end of this lockdown I'll be able to do it. And then like Ken's 3D printing, because it was really emotional hearing him speak, and he's been really sort of vocal and an important member of the new group Michael set up, which I'll leave him to talk about. But it's sort of just been sharing where we are in our life and having a space where you don't have to talk about childlessness, but you can make comments and chat to people who just know your position and your context. And I think, yeah, that's the thing for men. Like I am emotional, probably part of the reason why I'm a therapist, but I think for a lot of men, for men, we're told not to show emotions. So I think to have a group where you can be understood without having to talk about it, but just talk about your hobbies, your life, and if you need to say something about the childlessness, I think it's really important. And so how Michael sort of talked us into this was, and we came to a conclusion of, was the group's like a pub. You go down the pub, you might have 5 or 10 minutes of serious chat at some part of the night, probably after a few too many beers, but the rest of the time you're just chatting and being there for each other, and know you're there for each other as and when you need to. And I think perhaps that is the sort of space us men need, somewhere where we can chat if we need to, but also somewhere where we just recognised and belong. I guess that's my long-winded sort of introduction to myself. Yeah, over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Andy. I'll tell you, Kevin, I'll leave you till last, so that, you know, because obviously Andy's been on the show before, Robin's been on the show before, and then, you know, you might get I'm just thinking about in terms of comfort and confidence. So how about we go to Robin next?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Mancunian. That says a lot, doesn't it? A working class Mancunian from Old Trafford. Yeah. Gosh, that's suddenly I'm stuck for words, which is unusual.
Yeah, no, rubbish.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Well, you know, just where to start. I always expected to be a dad. Just that was the way it was going to be. I come from a large family of 8, and I'm 7th youngest, 4 boys, 4 girls, a working class, and it was just, you know, you're going to leave school, get a job, get married, and have children. That was it. And I did those things. I left school, first on the list, and I did get a job, amazingly, and I found someone, and we got married, and we were at that stage. I was in my late 20s, and she was mid-20s, and we were going on to the next step, to have children. We started doing the baby making, sex, and all that sort of thing, and then we split up. I think for a couple of things. One is, I think we were pretty immature when we got together, and certainly for me, there was a sense of not being on the right tack or in time with everybody else, with my peers. I think possibly the same for her. And again, when we started trying to reproduce. Although it was the next step, it was almost we're trying to fit a template that we weren't right for at that time, either of us, I think, and we split up. At that time as well, there was a big mortgage hike, economy tanked, and all that sort of thing. So I was stuck with the house. So that meant it was 2 or 3 years, and they're sort of crucial years. I couldn't really go out, so I couldn't really meet anyone because I was stuck financially. But then in my mid-30s, I did meet someone. All that financial thing went away, and that was a really deep, intense relationship. And she said to me one time, you know, I want to have children with you. And compared to when I was married, I felt very different, that actually I could do that. Whereas when I was married, it was very much, well, how am I going to provide? I don't have a great job. What's this going to do? There's a lot of pressure there. But this time, in my mid-30s, I thought, you know what? I can do this. You know, we'll work things out. But then we split up. And then I met my wife. We've been married 20 years. Been going out 25 years, I think. And we got together, and she's a bit older than me. She's from the healthcare professions. And she said, I did want to become a mother, but now I don't, because I'm older. I know what the issues are around having a child when you're older, and if the child's got special needs. And I don't think I can do that. So if you're with me, then you're not going to become a dad. And that was a big choice for me. And so I chose that. And I chose it for a number of reasons. I was nearly 40. I'm not that confident. Yeah, I may come across as a smooth, articulate player, but I'm not. It's all a facade. And there I am, deflecting into humour. Fantastic. But no, it was, at that time, who would have me? Who would have a 39-year-old, 40-year-old? He wasn't in a great career, steady job, but apart from the looks, and they were bound to fade. I'm being ironic there. Who would have, and where would I go? Where would I go to meet someone? Because I need to meet somebody probably at least 10 years younger than me. And there seemed to be a big generational change in that time, which would be around about the early 90s, something like that. And so I became involuntary childless, but not through the route that's usually associated with that, which is through going through IVF and through ART, assisted reproductive technologies, but by circumstance. And I was really broody in my 30s, particularly when I was 35. It was like everybody else could produce kids out of cupboards or out of the pocket. And I felt very distant. You know, there's the Woody Allen film, and it's quite a common image of being in one carriage by yourself, and across the tracks is another carriage, and they're having a big party. And everybody seems to be having lots of fun. And there's that sort of image and feeling of sort of being connected, but being disconnected. And disconnected, I guess, physically, but emotionally, and narratives and things you can talk around as well. I'm really going well here now.
You've warmed right up. There you go.
I've warmed right up. And then in my mid-40s, I started to look at doing counselling. I trained as a counsellor, and I did an MA. And for my dissertation, because it's counselling, it had to be something you'd experience. So I just said I was really broody in my 30s. And my supervisor said, "I'll do that." And that's when I found out there was really nothing about men and the desire for fatherhood and the feelings, biological feelings, and I do believe there's a biological urge there, but also those emotional feelings and the narratives around being a father and not being a father, and the losses around that for you as an individual. So that's why I became interested in, really, just in myself. It's all a narcissistic process. So I did my MA and found out, no, actually, I wasn't the only one. That was a core one. Was I the only one who was really desperate to be a dad? Who'd be in a pub and just feel completely isolated? Like there was a glass case around me. I was there, but I wasn't there. I was in contact, but I wasn't in contact, and felt depressed around it, and did some now out of context, age, stage sort of ways of behaving, because sort of hanging out with a younger crowd, because all my peers were parents and doing parenting things, and that's like if life's like a big Costco warehouse place, that's an aisle I can't go down.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Interesting to get the girls' perspective on, listening to this and how the perception of males are compared to what they're listening to now. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go over to Kevin. So, Kevin, as you're fairly new to this, just share what you're comfortable with. So yeah, look, tell us who you are, what you do, what are your hobbies. I know what your hobbies are. And how did I rope you into this?
It's all Sarah's fault. No, I work in IT, and I'll start rambling, and if I get too far off the beaten track or I need to stop, just tell me. But Sarah and I met at work. I used to work for a community organisation, non-profit community organisation, doing their IT, and Sarah was a community worker, and that was about 20 years ago. And we I guess we fell in love, didn't we? It's we wound up spending far too much time at work chatting rather than doing work and getting told off, and anyway, we Sarah's always wanted to have kids. I think, thinking back on it now, I was probably scared witless by the whole thing. It's in hindsight, if it had all just happened the way it's supposed to happen, it would have been amazing, but it just didn't. And we jumped through all the hoops, all the different kind of processes to try and make it happen, and it just didn't. And I think I've come out of my shell a bit more than I used to be. I've always been, how would you say, sort of when you're a kid, you're kind of chronically shy. It's as an adult, kind of I guess the kind of adult equivalent is still the same thing, really, isn't it? You kind of just don't know what to say and not, well, I suppose, struggle to relate to people or whatever. It's or think that there's more going on than there really is. But anyway, so in the environment, friends with kids, it was you kind of want to be engaged, but it's kind of, you don't know where to start. I guess it's kind of, I guess when you look at other people, it's kind of, when they're your own kids compared to someone else's, when you've actually had some, it's there's a difference there. But when you haven't had any, it's all I don't know, you've got no reference point, really. Anyway, so, but going through the whole process, I mean, it was, I don't know, it's 12, more than 12 years, I think, that we kind of rode the roller coaster, and it really was a roller coaster. It's you kind of, particularly, it's kind of, you're hoping things are going to work out, and then it doesn't, and you kind of pull yourself together, and then it's like, okay, well, we'll go again and see what happens this time. And at some point you have to get to a point, or, well, I suppose you got to kind of draw a line in the sand for whatever reason. It's So yes, it's
Yeah, I can totally sympathise with you, Kevin, because as you're talking, I'm just remembering a time where I was sitting on the lounge, crying my eyes out because Vicky's going, "Let's do it again," and we're 40
Yep.
by now,
mm-hmm.
and
I hear you.
I'm going, I can't. I'm just, I've never cried so much in my life. I said, I can't do this again. I really can't, because that, like you say, that roller coaster, for some reason, those dips get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
And it's, you kind of, I think I kind of put my feelings around the whole thing on hold because it was, just trying to, I don't want this to sound bad, but trying to cope with Sarah not coping with the roller coaster was enough to deal with without kind of processing, even contemplating processing what was going on for me, I suppose. So even now, it's kind of, a lot of the time it's, I don't think about it too much, but you do get, there's things, it's the strangest things kind of pop up that you just kind of remind you that, oh, that's right, it's not going to happen. And it's, yeah, and it's kind of the whole thing, regardless of whether whose perspective in terms of from the point of view of not being able to have kids, it's just a non-starter for most people. I think it's either people either don't understand or actively the concept of having to try and even process that that's a thing for people who have kids is just, and it's not everybody. There's some people understand or try to, but some people it's not even on the radar. It's kind of anyway. So yes, and you, Michael, kind of. We only met a few weeks ago. You kind of a trip up to Brisbane, and we spent a few hours kind of talking backwards and forwards, sitting on our back deck, and kind of broached the idea of doing this. And it was kind of even still leading up to kind of, what are we, half an hour in or something, but kind of leading up to it was like, is this a good idea or am I? But at the end of the day, I think, like you said, it's giving other guys an indication that there is a reality for people, like for us, that this is like people, you can talk about it, and it's like you don't have to, it's not a, I don't know, not a therapy session. That's not quite what I mean, but you know what I mean. It's like
it's a safe space to express yourself and just, feel, as Andy, I think Andy put it really well, somewhere you belong.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And it's the same things. It's lots of different aspects. I'm adopted is another one, and that's a whole other journey, but the same thing. It's kind of being able to talk to other people that can relate. It's like, I don't think you can completely, by any stretch of the imagination, understand what someone else has been through, but you can empathize, and it's a lot easier to be able to empathize and have a grasp of what's going on if you've been through the same thing, whether it's an adventure, whatever it is, kind of a shared bond or a shared understanding of something. But the only way you can have that is having been through it. It's not to discredit other people who haven't been through it. It's just that it's a reality of how these things work, I guess.
No, very true. And I was just going back to something you said there about when you felt, I'll try and paraphrase where you talked about you had to try and keep it together for Sarah's sake. And by the way, we're not talking about our Sarah Lawrence here.
No, I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, no.
Kevin's wife is Sarah Roberts, who has the Empty Cradle.
That's the one.
That's right. Yes, but going back to what you said about holding it together, my wife has often asked me, you know, why didn't you show emotion, Michael? Because I felt so alone. You know, she would have preferred me to show emotion, you know, when she was losing it, I guess. And I said, look, I couldn't because I was scared shit. I mean, I thought if if you've lost it and I've lost it, then we're fucked, pretty much. So I felt my place was to keep it all together, and you know, be the rock. You know, keep everything together so that we could try and, you know, hopefully move on from this at some time. So yeah,
That's something I've learned from you, Michael, but also just wanted to say that as well. Sorry, my microphone's in the wrong place, but I think that's been something I've learned from you, and I think what you've said there, Kevin, is absolutely spot on. I just sat there nodding my head furiously because that was, I can remember that vividly at the end of the last cycle of IVF that we had, or what then became the last cycle of IVF. And I can remember my husband eating a sweet. It's the most bizarre thing. He was eating a sweet at the time we had the scan. How can you just eat it? How can you eat anything? But he was just holding it together, and just, it was being regular, normal, you know, keeping it together, holding it together, I suppose, and just acting fairly pragmatically about it. But I do remember him saying, we cannot do this again. We can't do this again. I can't let you go through this again. I won't watch you do it. If you do it on your own. I can't watch you. And at the time, and for a long time afterwards, I didn't really speak about it because I thought, how could you just sit there and be so calm about everything? When we were there at the clinic and that very last scan that we had, and then to say, you know, oh, you can't do it. And I've learned since so much from these episodes and from Michael that actually that is common. I think that I've heard it so many times now that's how these things are, and it's understanding it from the point of view of the person. You know, if the journey involves fertility treatment, then it's kind of understanding those levels of involvement, I think, and the different ways that we are involved in these journeys that we have. I think there's a lot of talk about, you know, couples go through it and how people go through it, but you don't. Individuals, I think, go through it, and it's really hard to kind of keep that together sometimes when you've got different feelings about it and different paths that you've taken as well. I wanted to say something about Ken as well, but I'm going to just let you hand back to you, Michael. But there was something I just wanted to say about Ken stuff, but we'll go back later. I'll stop talking.
okay. I guess I should also talk a little bit about myself. My favourite subject. Sorry, did I say that out loud? So Vicky and I have been together now since we were 16. I was probably 2 years into the life in Australia from when my family immigrated from the UK, and we actually met as kid workers at a McDonald's, and I I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, and as I said to Vicky, said that the thing that caught me was your bum. She had this great bum in these pants with a really cut well, and she I want that back every time I mention it. But yeah, so we did the I'm just trying to how I can say this nicely. Vicky's family, how do we put this? Vicky's family were motivating her to have children early, at like 18 or 19. And like Kevin mentioned, you know, that scared the hell out of me. And my parents had always sort of put into my mind, mid-20s is the time. So there was always a little bit of friction there. But when we did start, well, actually, she was always told that she would need help getting pregnant. And when you're sort of 18, 19, 20, that means nothing. It's, oh yeah, whatever, you know. And when we started to actually try, you know, earnestly try, yeah, we went through the whole gamut of fertility treatments and got to 38, and we were broken, absolutely smashed. And we decided, no, that's it, stop. The wonderful thing about Australia is when you've worked for your employer for 10 years, you get long service leave. So you get 10 extra weeks of holiday. Sorry, Robin, I saw that look on your face. And along with our annual leave, we went on a round the world trip for 14 weeks because that's what we felt we needed to do. And we did, and we had a great time. Although I must say, spending 24/7 with your, you know, with your partner, you know, rushing around. And the last 2 weeks was a European tour that was aimed at people of our age, up at 6, in bed at 12. We were absolutely ragged by the end of it. And luckily, we're still talking to each other, which is good. Now, it was a great holiday, but the problem with that is it put our minds in a really positive state. And Vicky's gone, let's do it again. So, okay, all right, let's just do it again. Because in her way, it was, I don't want to ever have regret. I want to make sure I give this the best I can. So we did. And we had, I can't remember now, I think it was enough for 3 more embryo implants. And it was on her birthday that she was told that one of them worked. And it was a few weeks after that, that's September, I think it is. Is it September, when Father's Day in Australia? Anyway, Father's Day, miscarriage. So those days for us are pretty, they're tough days. And that was when, that was the last cycle. That was the last lot of eggs. That was it. And that's when we drew a line in the sand. And I will say that it has taken us 10 years to get to where we are now, where we are. It's 10 years of learning to accept. That's a good way of putting it, I think. Yeah. Now that doesn't, and like a lot of females talk about on this show, on this podcast, is it never leaves you, but you learn to manage that grief better. So for me, as I've aged, my resilience is less, and I've become quite emotional. And so, you know, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll hear me choke up quite a bit. And I feel that's a good thing for me. But yeah, it's and now that I have aging parents and I have both have health issues, that is also highlights what it means to be childless as well. And that's a whole another ballgame. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. So one of the things that I do, and Vicky and I do, is we have a workshop which is behind me through the wall there, and that's where we distract ourselves, and that's where we look forward to creating things, and that's one of the other ways that we cope. And what's been really good with the group that we've set up, and I say we because I'd like to think that you guys are all founding members of it, is just having a peek into what some of the other guys do. You know, so Ken, for instance, and his 3D printing, awesome. And Kevin, on the other hand, you go to his place, he's got about 5 cars he's doing up all at once. And, you know, but you can see the satisfaction he gets from that. Hang on. Robin's just had up a sign saying, I do fuck all. I can beep that out. And I know Andy writes and he walks and he photographs, you know, and I think that's important for us to all share that sort of stuff, because like Andy said, you know, it's about finding somewhere you belong, and it's not just talking about childlessness. It's about, you know, it's just about being with people who understand you, you know, and know that just in case, if I need to, I've got some guys there I can chat to. Yeah. So that's Ken. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Good. I mean, I got to say, though, it really is a pleasure to meet all you guys, you know, and I was looking forward to this for a long time. And I'm glad it's happening today.
No, it's interesting because Ken, you and Robin are sort of come to this point in a very similar fashion, where Andy, Kevin, and I have come in a different way, and I think it's really good that we can all share our stories.
Oh yes, and like I told you a long time ago, I thanked God for you and Vicky for the blog you had set up, and that's how I originally met you, and then you guided me to the Childless Path to Acceptance group, and yeah, that's been great for me. I enjoyed sometimes, even like when I hear a lot of the women post things of issues, problems they're having on a particular day. Sometimes I would like to make even a brief comment so they know that there's a guy that maybe understands how they're feeling. You know, like you said, you know, men don't speak up, but they do feel, and I feel greatly for all of them. As we all know, we all know what they're feeling and going through. I know my situation is a little different than most because my wife has children already, and you know, that's been some issues with me at times. Even on a daily thing, sometimes when the son maybe calls to see how she is and all, and I hear her into the phone, "Hi, hon, how are you?" You know, you know, and I don't have someone that does that with me. You know.
Yeah, I understand that. I make no secret about this. I've always seen babies as like high maintenance, and there's never it's never been something that I thought I'd enjoy. But I'm watching my niece and nephew grow now into them teenagers and young adults, and you know, you've seen how the parents of my sister and her husband have molded them, and I know this probably offends some people, but they've now become very interesting, and I can see I can see the value in them, and yeah, I do feel left out in that respect. That I feel like I could have, for want of a better word, I feel like I could have made a really good child as well.
Yes, I mean, I actually have 4 grandchildren. My wife's son has 2 children, and his daughter has 2 children, and them I've known since birth, and I played with them when they were young, you know, when they were little. Loved playing with them. I really enjoyed them, and you know, they had fun with me too. We you know, and they're getting older now, and they're still terrific kids, and you know, you just miss that, you know, like was your child, you know, seeing them grow up.
Yeah.
Helping them with things, you know, with issues, troubles.
Yeah. So I get the feeling, Ken, that it must have been a pretty lonely existence for you. You know, one, I guess, and I'm not trying to be derogatory to your family, but you know, you feel somewhat isolated. But I would imagine too that there's not much support around you or at your work or things like that.
No, work, no, none. Work is where I get most of my tormental thoughts, I guess you would say, from listening to people talk about their kids and all. Friends, I have no friends that can support me or family. That it's been all you guys, you know. That's the only place I get my support, and my wife has encouraged me to talk to you and the people on the group. And at one point, I'd like to just read a text that she had sent to me last month, and it helped me to understand that she understood me and how I felt. It was really, it was kind of eye-opening to me to really know now how she sees and understands how I'm feeling.
Please go ahead and read it if you want.
Okay. Last month was my birthday, and a week after that, we had a small little gathering at the house. Her two kids and her daughter brought her now boyfriend, and her son brought one of his daughters. But as always, the conversation went to each one's kids and things. And I came in the other room for a minute, Mike, and I was really upset. And my wife said she was very sorry, you know, that I had to go through that. She sent me a text the next day when I went to work. It said, "Yesterday was a very difficult day for you. I could see in your eyes, I could see your eyes go blank, choke down your food. My heart is broken for your pain. I've never felt such compassion for anyone like I felt for you, the most precious person in my life. I don't take it lightly. It seeps into my soul. Please speak to Michael and the other end. I'm for you 1,000,000% always. I love you and I'm here. You don't have to answer. Just know this is from my heart. I am concerned." Then I wrote back, "That's why I love you so much, because I know you do care. I know you're concerned, and I know you want me okay. When you came into the room where I was and said you were sorry, I could see it in your eyes that you were. And more importantly, I felt it. Thank you." So that was very eye-opening to me in a way, I guess. You know, she's told me she understands before that how I feel and stuff, and this was really an eye-opener to me that she did.
Well, I'm actually, one thing I'm impressed that you held it together, because I couldn't have read that out without crying. But to me, that seems such a positive thing that you two are now beginning to communicate about this.
Yeah, I mean, just as much as it's been difficult for me, it's been very difficult for her.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't know what to say to me sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, if she was in the same instance with me, it would probably be a little easier for her. Maybe she would know the words better to say. But you know, she tries in her way, and I do know she loves me, you know, immensely, and I do her. And if I had known the day I married her, or before, whatever, that we would never have children together, yes, I still would have married her. The person she is, the incredible, thoughtful person, caring person, oh yes, I still would have.
That's beautiful, Ken. But I think too, I think what you're a good example of, and I'm probably getting out of my depth here into some of the Robin and Andy who are much more adept at, you know, counselling than me.
Right.
You're actually setting a really good example by showing that being able to communicate is one of the great levelers of this. You know, what do you say, Andy?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm really touched by Ken and Kev's words. Really, it's it. Just hearing other people, and I'd say communication does seem so important, because I think me and my wife have survived it and come closer because, well, we're in the same situation. It's unexplained infertility. And while we both blamed ourselves, we never blamed each other. We've just kept talking about it. Admittedly, at times, there's been times where I've just clammed up and then sort of exploded in tears after a couple of drinks or something. But it is that constant talking that seemed to keep us together, to keep us going, and knowing if to try IVF again or when to stop, or it being okay that we're at different points in the grief, that one is having a tough time and one seems to be doing okay, or one day it's okay to see nieces, another time it isn't, and we can keep, by talking to each other, we do support ourselves. And I think in terms of communication outside of us two, I think, yeah, when we've talked to friends about it and it comes up, you see, because some of our friends don't have children by choice, and some do have children. As far as we're aware, we don't know of any other childless couples within our friendship. But when we do talk about it, they do listen. And I think it is, if we don't communicate our situation, how we are, it doesn't come up. And that does happen with our families as well. And I think there can be a sense that we're over it, we're done. I think last World Childless Week in September, my parents saw something I'd put on Facebook, 'cause I rarely put anything on Facebook outside of closed groups, and I hadn't realised they'd noticed. And they did. But it opened up their eyes again to it, and then we had a chat about, and it's not been chatted about since. There's all other psychological attachment reasons around that probably, but in terms of communication, when we do communicate, it does help us, and I think it helps others to understand us. And so perhaps going forward, that is for me something I'd like to do more of, is not just communicate to wider group of people who understand our situation, but perhaps have it in a conversation and be more honest about when it comes up throughout the year, say with my family or with friends, because I think it does help you not feel so alone with it. And I think it's important, I think, for those that are close to you to sort of understand all of you and not just say, see you when, or just get an idea that it's okay when it's not. Yeah, I don't know if that's quite what you're after, Michael.
Oh no, look, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on, just how Ken's communicating, and yours, you just followed on from that about how you guys do it. I'm going to skip you, Robin. I'm going to go to Kevin, because Kevin, how are you feeling with this chat now? Because I know you was a bit apprehensive. So how are you doing?
Really good, I have to say. It's just really, I'm stuck for words. I feel quite comfortable. It's okay. In the sense that it feels like a safe space, so to speak. It's good to be able to hear what other people talk about it, because I haven't. I mean, I know that Sarah, my wife, has been obviously involved in being very active for a long time now, and I've kind of just gone and hid in the shed and poked and prodded cars and or got caught up in work or whatever. But it's really good, I think, to be able to hear other people talk about it, and it makes it, I guess, safe. It just means, I think it just shows that it's okay, and that you can talk about it as much or as little as you kind of feel you need to, but that it is a real thing. And I don't know, I just kind of written it off as it's just one of those things. But
is that because perhaps you don't have any other childless men in your sphere, your sphere of friends?
Absolutely. I think it's very easy to be not very proactive about it. Maybe I'm the kind of person that kind of isn't very, unless it's something that I really kind of, for some reason, kind of get involved in, and I'm just kind of really enthusiastic about, and I will kind of follow up certain things. It's but if you're in an environment where you don't have any kind of other reference point, you don't have any other people that kind of share the similar kind of views, or at least kind of have an understanding where you can have a conversation with, that doesn't feel like kind of people, I don't mean this in a bad way, but there's a kind of, you can talk to people about things that kind of are open and comfortable to talk about things, but they still don't necessarily, they don't have an understanding of it. So whether it's childlessness or adoption, it's kind of, there's a difference between talking to someone who's just good at listening and is being a good friend or whatever, and someone who isn't any of those things, but at the same time really understands the realities, at least from their perspective, of what that's like. So no, okay. Coming back to the original question, I was rambling quite a bit, but I think it's actually really good.
Okay, no, thanks. All right, Robin, so hang on, I'm not on mute. That's right, you're on mute. So for Kevin and Ken, they won't be aware of some of the other things that you get up to. So, so you don't do fuck all. I know you get up to stuff. So Robin does a lot of research in this area. So he's actually got a doctorate. So I'm always interested to hear his opinions, and would be interested to hear what you've heard so far. How does that sit with the research that you've done in the past?
It all fits in really nicely. I just want to say to Ken how moved I was by him reading that text out and what it indicates about your relationship with your partner and with yourself as well. And what struck me was we're all actors. We all put a facade on, and there's an inside us and an outside us, and there's an us bit that's negotiating that bit between the inside and the outside. And in our part of us that's trying to fit in, we draw on scripts from the outside world that we can occupy. And that says something about us, but it also means other people can fit in with their scripts, sort of general scripts that we all use. And what we don't have is a script. There's nothing there for us to draw on that we can just drop into place to fit in. So I think for Ken, what you and your partner are doing are writing your scripts. And when you're writing something and developing something from what you may feel you've got no resources, you have, but they're not obvious, then that's really difficult, because you're testing every single word. Punctuation is a test. Am I making myself vulnerable? Am I hurting you? What's happening here? So I think what's happened for you and your partner, Kenny, is a difficult thing, but a beautiful thing as well, because you're making something unique, and that's going to strengthen your bonds between you. But because it's unique, there's always a risk of not quite fitting at a time and honing it as you go along. So that's what I wanted to say, Ken. It was really moving what you said. But yeah, you're right. I have done a lot of research, and from all the stuff I read, this men, a lot of women and couples that have gone through IVF, the women say he doesn't talk. and I just want him to hear and see what he feels. And the issue really is men are socialized from a very young age, boys are socialized not to talk, to express themselves outside themselves through actions. And that takes years of conditioning for that in. And once it's there, it's like, I'm sorry, you've probably heard this, what I say, it's like a concrete block between, just under the nape and neck, on the top of the chest, like a concrete block that's being placed there. And so for men to feel, to express what they feel, they've got to negotiate the concrete block. And the easiest way is like to go through your arms or your legs, so through actions, or your head. But so when men say, ask men what they feel, when I was counselling, not counselling anymore, I wouldn't really ask a man how they felt. I'd say, what's happening inside? Because if I ask men what they felt, they go, what am I supposed to be feeling? It's a dissociation that's been placed in there earlier. I've gone a bit technical here, aren't I? Sorry about that. But what's been found out about men and therapy is if you writing, drawing, action orientated stuff really works. So doing things like your 3D printing, Ken, and thinking around that, and then sort of working on the outside in, whereas for women it's usually for the inside out, is a good thing. So for men to do activities to get structure there, to respond to how you're being conditioned is a good thing. So for men, it's not that they don't feel, they do feel, it's how they communicate that feeling that's different to women and how they've been conditioned when they've been brought up. And so, yes, the rock is very much a common thing that men say. I'm the rock, because everything's fluid. It's like I'm sat in a storm that I can't control, so I've got to be the rock. Because if we're all stormed and pulled, and then where are we going to be? It's a rock, or is it a volcano?
Yeah, true.
And because a lot of that stuff's been stored there, bubbling and bubbling. And sometimes for it to be released, it'll be an explosion, or there's a diversion to get away. But for men, it can be difficult to be sat there and talking about what they're feeling, because those skills to easily communicate it need building.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, girls, I'd be interested to hear your observations so far.
Bloody hell. That's the toughest pub session I've ever been to, I'll be honest with you.
Me too.
Where's my beer?
Wow.
No, I just want to thank you all gents for being very open and honest, because I don't think, most of my friends are blokes, if I'm honest. I've got a few girly friends, but most of them blokes, and when we're having problems we go down the pub and it gets masked in drinking and laughing and joking, talking about football. It doesn't really ever get into what's actually bothering us. It's like a ginormous elephant in the room. So a lot of them are child free, so they've made the decision not to have children, but some of them do have children, but they know that obviously I'm childless, but it is a ginormous elephant in the room that I don't really talk about with them, because I don't want to sit in a pub and bring everyone down, basically. It's not really what I would call a safe space, if you like, for want of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not what you do, is it? But no, thank you. And Ken, your wife's words and your words back to your wife were just beautiful. You'll go, Berenice.
Okay. That's interesting you said about the pub, because I actually found, although I'm like you, I don't have that many friends who are female. If they are, then they tend to be from our community, because you just need that safe space. And in fact, actually, oddly, it's more some, not all, but some of my husband's friends have actually been more kind of, they'll just simply take, when I was going through treatment, they would take me aside now and then and just go, yeah, okay. That would be it. They're older, they just, you're right. And, they talk about their families and their children, but generally speaking, I found it a lot easier because it wasn't full on emotion, and it was just a kind of a check-in, I suppose. I wrote some stuff down, and I'm trying to just, what did I write here? It was about, I think, going back to that communication and what you were saying, Robin, and related back to Ken too. And we talked about it in one of the very earlier podcast episodes, and it's about finding ways of communicating. And we talked about speaking and writing and finding a way to communicate, because sometimes there just aren't the words, I think, to express what we've been through. I think that's really difficult sometimes. Even in the podcast, we struggle sometimes with words, and we sort of sit here and stare at each other, and someone will find something, but it's never always the right thing to say. And sometimes I think writing it down can be really helpful, whether that's a text. I found that really an interesting part of this conversation. I think that's really important to talk about that and different ways of communicating. And the other thing as well, I'm just so grateful that you're here, Ken, talking to us about being a step parent, because I think, and it's such an elephant in many rooms when it comes to childlessness. Is that kind of like, is that the thing, is that would that actually solve? And I've certainly confessed and said, well, if someone from Kenny's past appeared with a child, how would I feel? And you think, oh, well, maybe that would be quite a nice thing, throw everything to turmoil. But in those dark moments when actually what you want is just to let out those feelings of being a parent, you think, oh, maybe that's a good thing. And actually, of course, well, it's bloody hard. It's absolutely, and I've learned so much from this conversation. I learned from before when we'd spoken in the previous podcast episode, and you've shared your feelings online. But I think that's so important that we have that conversation, because I think it's often another level of isolation, because people make so many assumptions about, oh, well, maybe perhaps being a step parent is actually a good thing. And of course, it's no more of an easier thing to deal with than we get that thing of, oh, why don't you just adopt? It's all those tricky areas that are very hard to talk about when we haven't been through those paths ourselves. It just goes to prove there's so many ways that we can end up here having this conversation. But most of all, actually, I just want to thank Michael. I've actually just texted him anyway and just said that it's brilliant, but this is just so brilliant. Thank you, because I've learnt loads. I really hope that all our listeners will just learn something so powerful from this episode. Honestly, I've just sat here for, since 2 hours and just 1 hour and gone, okay, I've learnt that. Thank you.
So
much.
It's about time I told a story, because I haven't told a story yet.
You haven't. We're missing your stories. Come on.
So, and it's got a lot to do with what Ken, the conversation that Ken has with his wife through that text, and what we've all been talking about. But I, as you probably all know, I'm quite overt in what I do, with the community, because I have a very strong belief that the more we talk about it, the more people will begin to understand. So much so that I have a distant cousin, yes, one of those ones I picked up on Ancestry, who actually tried to join the Childless Path to Acceptance group. Now, she's a mother, and of course she got knocked back because she couldn't answer the questions correctly. But the point is that she watches what I do, and all the communications and things that I get up to, and her words were, well, I just want to support my cousin. I want to understand. And I think that, I was really touched by that. It's a beautiful thing, but I think it's a great example for for us as a community to be able to do that. And so that's why I was, just so touched by the way with Ken and his wife, because, that's what it's about. It's about being able to talk. Now, Robin, what did you just tell me? Come on, you have a poem you want to share.
There we
Okay.
go. No, I'm done. Yeah. Sorry about that technology. I only found mute about 10 minutes ago. I've been sitting quiet as possibly. Honestly, this technology is fantastic. Anyway, this is from the guys I interviewed. There's something they all said, and that is, there's something missing. And that's such a simple phrase, but it says so much. It says there's something missing, and there's something missing from inside. But there's also something missing outside. So like I was saying about the script, and we're a blank piece of paper, that's the missing. Okay, so here we go. A conversation ended before it began. Scatterings of coulda, shoulda, woulda, dada, the latent maelstrom of the non-man. There's something missing, holding a life-wide gap. Breathing wallpaper, I am whole and incomplete. There's something missing, first to be left behind, first to be sent in. This line is not complete.
Is a perfect place to finish this episode. But there was so much more that we discussed. We have a lot of female listeners asking us to do a Father's Day episode, just like we did for Mother's Day. So the boys and I gave our thoughts on that too, but you'll have to wait till later in the year to hear that. We would like to say thank you to Ken, Kevin, Andy and Robin for being courageous and spending this time with us. I like to think of the boys as my brothers from other mothers. And so much so that we have a small private group on Facebook where we hang out from time to time, updating each other in our lives and having that place to belong. If there are any other brothers out there who would like to join us, search the Clan of Brothers on Facebook or DM any of us and we'll get back to you. We really hope that you are doing well in these crazy times. We recognise that there are a lot of single people in our community that must be doing it tough right now. As we always say, you are not alone. Reach out to us if you feel you need to. Please don't suffer alone. And we will have more news on that in our next episode. Now, we would also like to give our thanks to those of you on the front line right now. Whatever country you're in, whatever your role, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We want to acknowledge it will be you that will get humanity through this time. Now don't forget, we have a presence on both Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and we always love hearing from our audience, even if it's just to say hello. You can find all our links on our awesome website designed by Berenice, www.thefullstoppod.com. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.